Hi everyone, welcome back to Long Game Heated Rivalry podcast. My name is Declan, this is Silvan, and together we are continuing with our review of the Heated Rivalry book by Rachel Reid. I believe this is part that we're on now. Before we get started, we would like to put a little bit of an announcement out. Silvan and I have a plan to organize an event, a bit of a meet and greet, just to come together in person and talk about Heated Rivalry, the books, the book club, anything that you're interested in that sort of coincides with the podcast. If you would like to come meet me and Sylvan in person, then you can come and see us in Belfast on the 19th of July. A little short notice, but if you're able to attend, please let us know. We'll be putting out a link that will connect you to a Google Doc, which will allow you to put in your name, your address details, anything like that, to sort of gauge interest to see if anyone is interested in joining us in Belfast on the 19th. So if that's something that you're interested in, if you have a bit of free time or you can catch a quick flight, then yeah, definitely check that out. We'll be releasing more details about that later on this month. Now, Sylvan had a guest on last time, and they went through a couple of chapters. A lot to do with Rose and Shane coming out to Rose. Lots of very big pivotal moments, but now we're ready to move on to Shane coming out, which I have been really looking forward to. Because it's such a big moment for him personally, but also for his relationship with Ilya. Sylvan, what did you think of the chapter?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Before I start, I just wanted to say thank you to Alicia, who joined the podcast last week and filled in your very big shoes. She did such a wonderful job at, creating that conversation and going through some of these really, really meaty chapters. And that's what I'm noticing. Like, we are
Yeah.
going a little bit slow because there is so much in these chapters. So thank
Mhm.
you, Alicia, if you're listening. So chapter 17 starts off with Shane coming to Ilya's hotel room to essentially that's when he comes out. I I have mixed feelings about this chapter, if I'm honest. The reason being is that the coming out to Ilya is very similar to how it's scripted on the TV show.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of the same dialogue, and Alicia and I talked about this in the previous episode where Shane comes out to Rose in the restaurant. Again, the dialogue is literally taken from the page, so it's actually quite nice to
Mm.
read. I don't know what your thoughts were on having that be so identical.
Yeah, it's one of those things with adaptation. There is a fine line that's drawn between um, what is important to include from the story and what is important to develop upon. And I think Jacob Tierney is particularly very good at picking these moments. So he knows where to put his energies. So if something isn't quite working in the book or could be delivered with a bigger punch, then he'll do that. But he will not deviate away from material that makes the reading experience or the enjoyment of the show any less. So like, there's plenty of examples of adaptations that just go off the rails, and the person who is getting a hold of the rights and the material think that they know better than the author who wrote it. I think Game of Thrones is a great example of that. I think it got to the point where the showrunners and the writers thought that they knew better than George R. R. Martin, and they do find that a lot of his projects that get picked up end up with this happening, which is why he usually drops out of them because other writers come in and they write with the intention that they know better than the person who originally wrote the story, which is, I don't know if it's like an ego thing or anything like that, but typically it doesn't result in a better product than what was originally written. And if you're not making something that is either unique on its own and still amazing and comparable, um, or you may as well not be doing it because if you're not going to do an adaptation that does justice to the original source material, then why bother picking up the story in the first place? But that's what I like about Jacob Tierney. He knows when to pick the right moments out of Heated Rivalry and when to not mess with them, and also when to improve them.
Totally, and I'm curious about how much involvement Rachel Reid had. I don't know, so I'm not going to make a comment because I tend to get corrected every week because I make mistakes. But I wonder how much involvement Rachel Reid had in terms of the script or in terms of what was going into the scripts, because I'm pretty sure that Jacob Tierney wrote them and I think he's the sole writer for season one. I know season two they've picked up an additional writer, but I wonder how much. Yeah, if anyone knows, like, I'd be interested to hear, because there is such a fine line, like you say, about how much the original author has input versus how much they're not used to how TV works. And it's a
Mm.
different medium, it's a different set of pacing, it changes things.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's why it's very beneficial that studios are able to work with authors who have like script writing experience and things like that. I think that's a great route for any writer to go down. Um, and a lot of really great projects have come out as a result of writers going down that route. Um, I think that Rachel Reid, like a good example within like the queer sphere, is Heartstopper. Like Alice Osman writes, co-writes a lot of the Heartstopper episodes. And she was originally like a comic artist. Like Heartstopper is a comic. And she has translated that now into like a TV now film version of her works into something that works within that medium. So yeah, that's a great example of like queer content being translated by the author who knows how TV works and is able to do it justice. So yeah, I hope Rachel Reid, and I can imagine that she would be more of like an input when Jacob is needing clarification on things. That's the idea I would have got if she's not getting a writing credit. It's more, why did you choose to do this with these characters, or what does this tell you about these characters? What were you thinking when you wrote this line? I think that's more the idea of how involved she would have been. Obviously, there's no way of knowing, but from my guess that she doesn't have like that writing credit. Maybe she does, and we're just wrong. But if
I
she
don't know.
does, she was involved. If she doesn't, then it would have been like an advisory thing or a clarification on certain things. Because she's clearly very much part of the show
Yeah.
and the marketing, and she's involved, and clearly she is happy enough with what turned out. I know I would be. And she does. You do get the idea that she is quite involved in what's happening. Maybe in the regards to the writing that's going on anyway. But yeah, she does seem to have a good relationship with the showrunners.
Definitely, you can see that there's a trust there in that relationship in terms of the writing. I think for me, where it hasn't worked as well when an author of a book writes the script for a movie, for example, is Nicholas Sparks. Now, I know I'm going to be attacked by this. I love a Nicholas Sparks novel. I loved A Walk to Remember, The Notebook, Message in a Bottle, Nights to Rodin. I read all of his books. He wrote the book, I think it's The Last of Us or something like that. It's the one with Miley Cyrus. Now, he wrote the script to that. I did not think that was the strongest script. And when I realized it was him writing it, I thought, this is why. This is why you have people who specialize in script writing.
Is it? Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know exactly the movie. Is this the movie where she met um, Liam Hemsworth?
Yes.
Oh my god, the best thing to come out of that movie was that song "When I Look at You."
Oh, interesting. That's the
Yeah,
song you.
I'm pretty sure that
Oh,
song came from that movie or was made for that movie. Don't quote me on that because I'm not some Miley Cyrus super fan. I just like that song, and I'm pretty sure it was on that movie soundtrack. But yeah, I didn't know that was like a Nicholas Sparks novel, but that's very interesting. I've always wanted a gay version of Nicholas Sparks, and I'm hoping Rachel Reid maybe is that.
maybe. I mean, I think Nicholas Sparks is a really good writer, especially in romance. So when I've read romance before, it's been MF romance. I've never really read a lot of MM. I know you're more prolific in that.
Mm,
And I have looked it up. It's called The Last Song. So the book and the movie both have the same name, and so I
mm.
just wanted to make sure I fact check that, because Lord help me. And coming back to this chapter, I think what really stood out to me is, this pivotal moment like you were talking about Shane coming out to Ilya, and it sounds so. When I say Shane coming out to Ilya, it sounds it's I'm struggling to find the word, so help me out here, because it's not minuscule, it is important, but it's almost like a, well, duh kind of moment.
It's kind of like reminds me of me coming out to my mom. You're going, yeah, I know. So like, what do you want, a medal? It's it just is that instantaneous acceptance. Like, I don't think sexuality is really an issue in Ilya's book at all. I don't think he has like an internalized homophobia or anything like that. Comes across as a very secure person when it comes to sexuality, whereas Shane is not. He's very insecure about his sexuality. And whilst Ilya is obviously very cautious about being seen, sleeping with men, things like that, obviously he needs to protect himself. That stigma, like he doesn't have that really. Whereas Shane, for him, he has this perfect image to maintain and this perfect outcome for how he wants his life to be. And essentially, this idea of being gay is not in line with that image whatsoever. His self image that he's built up in his head has just been broken, and he's finally admitted it to himself. And he has to go and run the person, or run and tell the person that he cares the most about, which is Ilya. Like, he has to let him know. He has to come out with it and say, "I'm gay." And while Ilya is very lackadaisical and kind of unserious about the whole thing, I do get the idea that he's doing this to like calm Shane and to be like, "I'm fine with this. It's okay." Like, I've always sort of known. Obviously, we're sleeping together, and I think it's his way of injecting a little bit of humor because it's very much their banter. Like Ilya's dry humor and Shane being the sort of one that's a bit high strung and going on very intense with the emotions. And so it's like a yeah, I know, it's okay. Like, you don't need to worry about that. But thank you for telling me. And you do get that sense that there is like Shane expecting almost like a different reaction, but then he remembers, yeah, this is Ilya. Like, he's not gonna give me the big reaction, is he?
Yeah, he's not gonna get the big warm hug, honey, it's okay, all that kind of thing that you sort of fantasize sometimes when you do come out to somebody, because he gets the like, what's the big deal here? Like,
Yeah. But you want a
my
medal?
like my dick has been in your mouth. Like, let's move on. Um, but I think there is this sort of this difference for Shane that I'm getting from the book, where he's like, "You're not gay," and Ilya's like, "Well, no, not completely."
Hmm.
And so
Yeah,
there is still this comparison between almost that character arc, that character journey for Shane, where it feels more monumental.
yeah, yeah. He's finally talking about it, which is this is something that he has avoided. Like, for the majority of the book, he doesn't want to discuss sexuality. He just doesn't bring it up. Um, they do what they do, and then they just do not discuss it. But this is where the big change is coming now, where Shane does want to discuss it. He is acknowledging not just his sexuality, but Ilya's as well. He's acknowledging that you're, you know, you're something, but you're not fully gay. Like, I acknowledge that you like are also sexually attracted to women. Like, he is finally ready to start discussing this stuff like an adult. Um, well, maybe that's not a fair way of putting it. He's ready to discuss it now that he feels more comfortable with who he is. And that's a big step. So it is. So yeah, I really like that this moment is shared between him and Ilya, because a different romance writer wouldn't have had them have this discussion.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. It would have just been, and oh, I told my parents I came out. And it's like, oh, I'm so proud of you, yada yada yada. But they don't come out to their partner. Like, whenever it's like a straight, or it's like a bi awakening, or it's a gay awakening, you'd be surprised by how few offers actually include coming out to their partner that they've been sleeping with, to the point where they go, "I'm gay." And they're like, "Yeah, that's okay." Like, it doesn't happen as frequently as you want, and I do think it's important that it's acknowledged, because it's a big moment. It's a big moment in terms of their relationship. It's like a new thing. It's an acceptance of self, and so it should be a big moment. And it's a missed opportunity when I see authors don't like make something of it. And I do think it is a missed opportunity when they don't.
That's so interesting. So, to Rachel Reid's credit, she does it really well here in a way that fits the characters.
Yeah, and they're true to themselves. Shane comes out in the way that you would expect him to come out to Ilya, and Ilya reacts in the way that you would expect Ilya to react. And I'm just getting to the point now at this stage of the book where I'm like, God, she's just written really, really good characters. Like these guys, I know them inside out by this point. I know how they'll react. Their personalities are so on point, and you're just sort of they're like fully realized at this point. They're like they're people, and we know these people now because we're living their lives with them. And yeah, it just makes it so much more enjoyable.
And to that point, we get to understand them more because they are consistent and they behave consistently and they speak consistently. And I think that's what was missing in Game Changer. The characters were all over the place making decisions that didn't really make sense or saying things that didn't make sense and saying things that didn't seem real. Like, I don't know, the dialogue was just weird in Game Changer for me at
Yeah,
parts.
yeah, I agree. Scott and Kip to this day still remain sort of like near the bottom of my ranking of these books. And I think that it's just because their characters are so inconsistent. They do not behave in the way that they should, given that we're introduced to them with certain character traits, certain personalities, and you just sort of don't buy that they would make these decisions. And so you can't buy into the characters, you can't buy into the book.
Yeah. One thing you said earlier was about how do you discuss sexuality and sex? And it took me back to, and this is going to be a very old throwback to Dawson's Creek, where, and this is not a spoiler because it's been like 20 years or whatever,
Dawson's
but
Creek is like your Buffy to me.
no, but I love Buffy too, so I will get on board with the Buffy train too. But yeah, I grew up on Dawson's Creek, Buffy, 90210, all of those shows.
Nice.
But for me, there is a point in Dawson's Creek. I don't ask me what season this is, but it's when Pacey and Joey are together, and this is how I knew the writing was so good, even as a teenager. You know, they're debating about whether to have sex for the first time.
Mm.
Pacey's obviously had sex, but Joey hasn't, and I think Pacey says something along the lines of, well, if you can't talk about it, maybe we shouldn't be having it. And
Yeah,
that stays with me still. And when you were talking about them discussing their sexuality or not being able to discuss their sexuality before, but still having sex, that remains incongruent for me.
yeah, exactly. So there are a lot of instances where, and anyone who's like slept with a closeted person would know this. Um, a lot of them don't want to look at it. They don't want to view that thing. It's the elephant in the room, but they sort of decompartmentalize. That goes to a different part of their mind, and it's not brought up. It's not discussed. And when it's not brought up, it's not discussed. Then there can be no real relationship built because you're living a lie. You're living in denial. You are not acknowledging a huge aspect of what this relationship requires to work, which is to be outside, to be public, to be in each other's company, to attend family gatherings, to go to parties, to be able to go on holidays and be seen and to be in love. You cannot do a relationship without willing to do these things. You can't do that if you can't even acknowledge that you want to be in a relationship with a man. And so there is no future for a relationship in which a person cannot admit their sexuality to themselves whilst they are participating in that sexuality. Um, it just doesn't make sense.
I agree. And this is how I know these characters are growing and they're developing, and there has been this scope for them to develop into what we see now
Mm.
because
Yeah.
we need them to get to this point. We can't accept them together with all these sort of vacuums of space that hasn't been addressed or
Mm.
hasn't been brought to the surface in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And there was one thing I remember you talking about when we were reviewing the TV show, and you talked about Ilya not being almost like Ilya not liking himself or not believing that Shane likes him. Because again, here we see this in the book where, you know, Shane says, I can't keep pretending I don't like you. And then Ilya says, you don't like me. And then
Yeah.
Shane says, I do. Maybe I like you too much. And then it says, Ilya's heart clenched.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And given the context of that, like, hidden chapter, like the hotel room, Las Vegas, from Ilya's perspective, you understand that Ilya thinks that Shane dislikes him, but is so hot and bothered about him that he can't help himself. But now what Shane is doing is essentially showing Ilya that, "No, what, I like you for you. I actually like you. I like your stupid personality and the way you make me feel." Um, and for Ilya, it's almost like, "There's no way. There's no way. You're being ridiculous. This is ridiculous." He can't believe it, which is funny, but also sad.
Yeah.
Um, like, he is presenting the most outside of Svetlana, he is, and actually, that's only in reference to the book. Svetlana is the only one who really knows him within the show. Within the book, no one knows him as much as Shane. Shane is actually the one who knows Ilya the most. He sees the most of who Ilya truly is as a person. And so Shane is accepting him, knowing who he is. And so, wow, he wants him.
Yeah, and how common is that, especially for, and I can only speak to the experience of gay men, to not feel lovable, to not feel loved,
Mm.
to not feel like they deserve that love. And it's that
Yeah.
it's where that you can't love me or you can't like me thing comes from for a lot of gay men, I imagine.
Yeah, and that comes from trauma. It's the fact that as a young gay man, gay boy, like, you are taught that being gay is not a lovable thing. You cannot be loved if you are gay. It is a bad thing. And so people who are bad do not deserve love. That's what your parents teach you. That's what society teaches you. If you're bad, people will withdraw their love from you and you'll be ostracized. And being gay was considered one of those bad things. And so people create this idea in their heads that I'm the bad thing, so that means I'm not lovable. Even though they can fully accept themselves and be like, I am gay. I'm gay. Look at me. Look at my rainbow flag. I'm out here in my, skimpy outfit, shaking my ass. I'm gay. Woo, happy pride. But inside, they have completely internalized the idea that they're not lovable because they're gay, which is incredibly sad. And it leads people to not want to pursue long term, meaningful relationships. And that is such a waste because hookups are fun. No one denies that. But having love and acceptance from another person that meets you on your level and wants to spend all their free time and, life with you is infinitely better. So it is a shame. And I do wish that there were more resources for gay men and queer people in general to be able to address some of these really negative self-image issues and really horrible internalized beliefs that are dragging them down and leading them to lead lives that are less than fulfilling.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's incredibly sad, but also a very stark reality of what is
Mhm.
happening. And I like that you caveat that by saying queer people because that's true. It's I think it's a shared experience amongst a lot of queer people. But I want to talk about some of the differences in this chapter that I found. So here we find out that Ilya's mom is dead. we also find out, we get confirmation that Ilya's dad has Alzheimer's. Now we know that there's something going on, but we don't know it's Alzheimer's. And in true Ilya fashion, it's delivered really bluntly.
Mm.
There's not a lot of fluff in there. And maybe it's because for Ilya, English is his second language. So naturally, I think in your native language, you pad out sentences and
Yeah.
vocabulary and more naturally than you would if
Mhm.
it was a second language.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like it had the impact it meant to, because it was delivered all on one page. It felt like it was like, this is something I need the readers to know. Right, let's move on to something else. And I'm like, hang
Mm.
on a minute. There is such a missed opportunity, because within that same page, we get both these big pieces of information that form such a big backstory to Ilya growing up, but also why Ilya is the way he is.
Mm.
And then they just move on. And I'm like, wow, really? Yeah, that's my sort of view on that big difference in this
Mm.
chapter.
What do you think Rachel Reid's motivation was for doing it like that?
That is a good question. I'm not, I struggle when people ask me these kinds of questions, because I'm not a writer. I work in psychology, and if it was a client, so do you know what? I'm gonna
Yeah.
caveat this. I'm gonna pretend it's a client sitting in front of me who has delivered this information just like that. If a client were delivering that information to me, sitting in front of me, I would think, you're in your head, not your heart.
Mm.
You're semantically processing it, but not within your body, not somatically, not with your emotions, not with your feelings.
You're not feeling
That's
it.
what comes across to me.
There you go. He is trying to be nonchalant. He's trying to go, oh, well, mother died and whatever, and my dad has Alzheimer's, but whatever, it's not a big deal. He is being completely incongruent with his feelings. He is presenting this information to Shane because he wants Shane to know, because he just received a very open gesture from Shane, and he wants to meet him at his level, but not so much that he's ready to break down and discuss this stuff with Shane in any way that is meaningful. One thing that we do learn about Ilya is that very he struggles a lot with expressing his emotions in the way in which they're actually being felt. He masks his emotions with other emotions. So he does. So he feels hurt. He will mask it with anger. That's common. He feels insecure. He'll mask it with humor. It's masking. That's what Ilya is. Ilya is incredible at it. He's really good at masking, and he does it throughout the books. And this is another version of that. This nonchalance is a mask. It is not how he's truly feeling, but he cares enough about Shane to want to let Shane know what's going on with him. But he has to deliver it in this way because if he does it any other way, he's afraid he'll get emotional. That's what I get from it. And Shane is, by this stage, I think this is a good example of Shane's neurodivergence. He does not know how to address this. He does not know what to do with this information. He does not know how to inquire or how to open a space and to become an active listener. He does what he can, what's within his sort of remit to be able to do. Um, I'm sorry that's happening. Like, it's genuine and it's heartfelt. He does feel genuinely sorry for Ilya, and I imagine he wishes this wasn't happening to him, but he doesn't know how to take it beyond that. Which is something that will again show up in the next book, is this mismatch in how to read each other and how to react to each other's feelings. Um, because honestly, if I was dating a guy, we had this big moment, and he comes out and he tells me that, yeah, my mom committed suicide, and my dad has Alzheimer's. Oh my god, my reaction would be so different. Like, oh my god, like, do you want to talk about it? Like, tell me what happened? Like, how are you with that now? How are you feeling? It would be a completely different thing. But yeah, Ilya is with Shane, and so Shane's reaction is different, and Ilya is different in his delivery. So
Can I ask, would your reaction be contingent on your background and the fact that you're training to be a counselor, and that's sort of what you would naturally do as Declan the person, but also Declan the counselor?
Hmm. What a very interesting question. Um, I don't know. At this point, Declan the Counselor is still me. It's a version of me I use for certain purposes, i.e., helping people. Um, but yeah, it's kind of like the way sometimes you behave differently depending on what group of friends are around.
100%.
Yeah, those versions of me that one group sees and then the other sees, they're both me. They might not be the me that other people see, but both of those versions are true to me. And it's very much the same. I might be like within this podcast, like coming from a therapist guise, but that therapist is me. It's still me. It's still my personality. It's still the way I do things, the way I want to do things. And there's are times where I would be more withdrawn and I don't really want to ask people questions. That's still me too. It's just me with maybe a bit less energy in a different setting. So to answer your question, um, I would like to think so. That's in me anyway.
Hmm.
I might not have the language and the skills to be able to communicate it as effectively as I've learned to. But the intention would always still be there, and the effort would still be
Yeah, I hear you. There's this assimilation of both these versions of yourself, essentially,
there.
and in a way that feels quite authentic to you because it is who you are as a
Mhm.
person at your very core. You are that, you know, lovely, trusting, inquisitive, curious person that wants the best for somebody else. And this is where I almost see Shane's response as very Shane like. So you were talking about like, oh, Shane said I'm sorry, and he says, oh shit, I'm sorry. That's it. But I think Shane doesn't have the emotional vocabulary. And I know in the book, I don't know if he's written as neurodivergent in the book. I know it's very much in the TV show, but again, I don't know what this it is in the book. So I'm going to take that out of it for now,
Mhm.
um, just for the purpose of this argument. And I know a lot of friends who would react very similarly to Shane. They wouldn't, when you tell somebody somebody's dead, people don't generally know what to say. It's a very awkward, like, I'm really sorry for your loss kind of vibe, which
Mhm.
isn't a bad thing to say. I'm not saying it's bad. And, you know, Elias really dumped, my mum is dead, my father's Alzheimer's. What the hell is Shane supposed to do with that? Like, really? Like, it's like a double whammy. Like, okay, I don't, I very much like you would be like, tell me more. What's going on for you? Like, what are you feeling right now?
Are
I
you
don't
alright?
think Shane has that in him to ask those kinds of questions, as would a
Um,
lot of my friends, I think.
mhm. Yeah, I suppose it just depends on personality type. It really
Mm,
does. Um, Everyone is so individual and so unique, but people share certain traits, and one of them is not having an idea what to do whenever someone is hurt or in pain or um, creating an atmosphere that makes you feel uncomfortable. People don't know how to handle it. Um, and I think it's an acquired skill, to be honest. I think, like, I'm Irish. I come from a Catholic background from Northern Ireland. Um, like when it came to like wakes, like if you're not aware, by the way, so in certain parts of Ireland and Northern Ireland in particular, and a lot of sort of West Ireland, um, whenever someone dies, there will be like a wake. Like the body will be brought back to a house, and it will be sort of it's an open coffin. It's like displayed. People from the community will come. They'll pay their respects. They'll meet the family. They'll talk and catch up and how you doing, how's things, how's the family. You'll have some tea, biscuits, sandwiches, a little bit of soup, maybe. some lasagna if you're classy like my family is. Um, and it's like a way of allowing the community to gather. Um, but within that ritual, I learned how to speak to people from a place of grief, from a place of loss, and how to do what is, you know, the societally nice thing to say to people whenever they're grieving and whenever they've lost someone. Like I've learned better how to handle that because of how I was raised, how I grew up. Um, Whereas some people come from backgrounds where they've never even encountered death before. Like, death has never been a thing that they've ever had to deal with, or someone's loss has never been a thing they had to deal with. And so being thrown in the deep end, especially if you come from a background where your life has gone pretty well, parents have done a great job, there's been no tragedies. Thank God for you, well done. But guess what? My mom died, committed suicide, and by the way, yeah, my dad has Alzheimer's. What do you do whenever you have someone that comes from a background which is kind of like had the perfect upbringing without much challenge? Um, Obviously, Shane will have his unique challenges due to his race and things like that. But in terms of grief and family tragedy, no, not from what we learned. So, what does he do?
He says nothing. Well,
He
he
doesn't
doesn't
know what.
know. Yeah, he doesn't know. And I think you're right. I think Shane has, for the most part, had a very sheltered life, let's be honest.
Mhm.
It's been privileged and it's been sheltered. Yes, he's had other issues, sure. And I think whilst you were talking, it took me back to sort of instances with particular friends of mine. It's a very good friend of mine from back home, and she actually listens to the podcast. And when I told her about, my experience with, my parent, she was like, I don't know what to say right now. And I felt more seen and more heard from her saying that than the I'm so sorry for your loss kind of spiel, because that to me means very little. And then on the other hand, I'm thinking of a newer friend who I was talking about my experience with my parent. And the first thing she said was, what was their name? And that blew me away.
Mhm.
I was like, that meant so much to me that
Yeah.
it wasn't tell me what happened, or, she didn't
Mhm.
care about that. She wanted to know what the relationship between me and my parent
Yeah.
was. And
Yeah.
that to me meant more. And that was and it stuck with me. It really did. It was
Yeah.
such a lovely, lovely thing to say, actually.
It's a very important thing that me speaking from experience that when you're grief counseling someone that you bring the lost one into the room. I've asked clients, tell me about them. Like, what were they like? What was your mother like? What was her name? Like, what did she like to do? What were her likes and interests? And what's your favorite memory of her? Like, bringing the person alive into the room, like, and that is so healing because so many people avoid grief and avoid talking about losing someone because they don't want to cause pain either to themselves or to the people around them. But in that, they lose the loving memories of the person. They don't get to talk about them like that. And that's a shame. You know, they're gone, but they're not completely gone. They're still there in your mind and in your heart. And you should, um, honor how they were when they were alive,
Mm-hmm.
how they were passionate, how they were influencing your life in this very positive way, and recalling that. It doesn't always need to be sad. And sometimes you'll just cry happy tears instead because you got to love them. And that can be very big for people that are very avoidant of dealing with their grief.
Yeah, because I can't imagine Ilya being brought up in an environment where they were talking about his mum with his brother and his father. Like that's just, I can't imagine that happening for him. And so it was, I imagine, not really talked about. And so in the book, he doesn't even have Svetlana as a childhood friend, like you said. He's not talking to anyone about this.
Yeah. And because of the nature of her death as well, there would have been stigma around it,
Yeah.
which would have made it even more taboo to talk about. So Ilya has never dealt with the grief of losing his mother, like
No.
guaranteed. And to lose her in such a traumatic way is awful, awful for any child, any adult, never mind child.
Mm,
So yeah, I mean, it's no wonder he has developed these self-defense mechanisms where he masks his emotions because that was what was culturally expected of him.
yeah. And I know we've been very harsh on Shane in the past, but this is where I give him a lot of grace
Yeah.
in this specific scenario. I do give Shane, he gets a free pass here.
Yeah, it's an awkward position to be put into, but you know, he tries his best and he is authentic and well-meaning in his responses to Ilya, and he gets better at it for Ilya.
Yeah, yeah. And this is what I like about, in a similar way that what the TV show does. Rachel Reid also does this in the next chapter. So if we move on to chapter 18, we know
Mhm.
we've got a really heavy chapter previously, but this one gets lighter. It's not so heavy. And I think there are moments in the TV show that do that, that sort of mirror that as well.
Mm, yeah,
And I think this is such a nice touch because I was like, I need to be picked up now. Let's move on, please. I need a bit of a pick me up here, and she does it. Like we get this introduction to Frank Zulo, who's from Scott's team. You know, we talked about that in Game Changers a little bit, so I don't feel like that's hugely significant, and it doesn't feel
no, not
significant in this chapter.
not really. He's just like a side character.
Yeah, but and interesting enough, I didn't highlight or I didn't underline rather lots of this chapter because it's them texting backwards and forwards. I mean, the extent of it, I mean, this is where we come back to the smutty bit, is where Ilya masturbates with his non dominant hand because of his elbow injury. And I thought, do you know what? We've all been there.
Yeah,
You
sure.
know, it's not the
Uh,
best, but it'll work.
yeah. Well, I've luckily never injured my dominant hand, so you know, take from that what you will.
I mean, do you know? But I think we needed that levity. We
Yeah,
needed that
yeah.
sort of, okay, let's
We
return.
wind it down a little bit. We were getting heavy. Wind it down. But it also shows a more lighter, less angsty version of their relationship because for the past few chapters, everything's been so intense and there's been so much going on. They've been fighting. They're trying to like find other people to sleep with, and yeah, yeah, we're challenging the relationship, challenging the dynamic. Shay comes out. It's a lot. There's a lot going on, and so now that they establish that no, we want to continue this thing, and I'm continuing it for the honesty that I really like you, and they've sort of given themselves a bit of permission to be a bit friendlier with each other, maybe a bit more romantic, maybe a bit more flirtatious. Um, and giving themselves permission to not feel like they need to justify the time they spend together. I think that's a big
Hmm.
thing.
Yes. Yes, hugely. Because we see, because that's growth. And we see this growth here where, we come back to the heaviest stuff. Well, we stay with the smutty stuff, which is great. And here we see Shane and Ilya hook up before a game, but not like the night before, like the day of the game kind of thing. And they haven't done this before. And immediately Shane says something is wrong with Ilya because Ilya's, I think, the one who's initiating come over kind of thing. We'll be quick; it'll be an hour kind of thing, and then Shane eventually agrees. But Rachel Reid writes, Shane watched him as he licked and sucked his cock and allowed himself for a moment to wonder at Ilya's desperation and his need for this before a game. And then later she writes, something is wrong with Ilya. The thought hit Shane suddenly. So Shane has this perception. You know, he
Mm,
has this. Something's going on. He doesn't know what, and he doesn't have the vocabulary for that yet. Because I don't think he reads Ilya as well as Ilya reads Shane.
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
And you can see this. So he's like, I know something's wrong. I'm gonna bank it. I'm gonna, let's just get through this bit, the sex bit, and then maybe afterwards.
yeah. I find that what's happening now is that Shane is actually catching up to Ilya in terms of how much he understands him. Like, he is beginning to learn Ilya's tales and what makes Ilya tick, what he likes, what he doesn't like. And I don't think he's realized how much he is in tune with him at this point. Until he's like, no, there's something wrong with him. Like, I can tell now that there's something wrong with him. Something's not right. He seems to want something from me. Like, he's needy. There's like a desperation here. He needs this. He needs the affection. He needs the distraction. He needs something from me. And I don't know why all of a sudden he needs it. So Shane is slowly beginning to pick up on what Ilya is throwing down, which is perfect because this is the chapter of we're really growing here as a couple. Like, we are getting closer. We are allowing ourselves to actually, grow together without all the angst. And we're just doing it. So yeah, it's a nice natural progression, I think, for him to notice that.
You're right, and as much grace as we gave Shane in the previous chapter, here we see him saying, "Are you okay?" And he says, "I mean, I know we don't really talk, but if you need to." And obviously, Ilya cuts him off with, "I'm fine," as we expected. But then Shane doesn't let it go. He's like, "Is it your dad?" And then Ilya sighs heavily and scrubs a hand over his face. And then Ilya says, "My father is dying, but that is not the problem." And then Ellie's like, "Oh, so you see Shane really trying here, where
Yeah.
he didn't know what to do in the previous chapter. Bless him."
Yeah, 100%. He is becoming more proactive with actually pursuing Ilya. He is no longer taking no for an answer. He's not taking Ilya at face value because he knows now that Ilya likes to mask his feelings. And so he is much more committed to pushing Ilya. And that's something you can only do when you're really comfortable with a person. Like, you're not going to push a stranger for details whenever something bad is going on with them. Just gonna go, okay, I'll take you at face value. All right, if you say no, you're fine. But if it's a friend, it's like, no, I'm not stupid. I know you. What is wrong? Tell me what's wrong. And you're gonna pester them because
Mm.
you're their person, and sometimes they just need to know that you care enough to keep asking. And I think Ilya gets this from Shane that it wasn't just an empty offer. Shane cares.
Yeah, and in true Ilya fashion, he doesn't give a lot, but I don't think he's there yet.
Mm,
He's like, my father is dying, but that's not the problem. The problem is Paulina and my brother who want more money from me. And so he goes into a topic that is easier for him to talk to because the money is easier to talk to, the way they, I guess, extort him for money, really. Like
yeah.
he's their cash cow in a way.
Mm. He is like he is basically their sort of, prize horse that they've been training up, and he's off to the races and he's off making the family money, and that's how they view him, as an asset, not as a family member, which is really sad and very dehumanizing for Ilya as well. It's not nice. Um, I like the way that Ilya does, you know, in the book, it's much less nuanced a relationship that Ilya has with his father. I've noticed. I think this is one of Jacob Tierney's better improvements.
Yeah,
That Ilya is very torn about his father in the show.
yeah,
Like, he loves him. You can tell he loves him in the show. That he wants to make him proud. He is, changing himself to adapt to him. And there is, like, obviously, he hates the way that he behaves. It's very hate love. Typical of, a child that is being raised by an abusive parent, and that child still, despite all that they've been put through, wanting their love, which is very human and very realistic. And so the book is a bit more clean cut. Ilya doesn't like his father. He hates his father. He is sort of waiting for his father to die. Um, and he obviously is feeling complex emotions about that. But you get the feeling that it's not quite as devastating for Ilya that the father is dying, more so that his family is a fucking mess and he has no idea what to think of it.
I love that point because that's why, as a reader, you're not that emotionally invested because neither is Ilya.
No, he's not. And I think Jacob Tierney has zeroed in on that how do we get the audience to be emotionally invested in this big change for Ilya? Like this loss of his father, like how does that play off with the loss of his mother and this relationship with his brother? He's gone, well, obviously I'm going to need the audience to know that Ilya cares about his father, and then that will give it more emotional weight. And so we'll care more whenever he dies. Um, I'm guessing that. But it would make sense given that he has developed that relationship out. He's taken time to insert more scenes, more dialogue, more interaction, a meaningful interaction that actually matters to the plot. Um, so yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that he's taken the time to flush that out.
And to your point, in the very next chapter, so in chapter 19, we find out Ilya's father's died. And we find out in a very similar way to how we find out in the TV show, in that there's that locker room scene, and they're like, "Did you hear about Rosanov?" And then Shane goes off and calls Ilya, and Ilya is sort of very matter of fact. However, one huge difference, and I know you've talked about this when we were reviewing the TV show,
Mhm.
there is no monologue here. There is no Russian monologue from Ilya. The conversation still happens on the phone between them, but Rachel Reid does not have what Ilya says in very much depth in the way the TV show does. And so I was reading this like, where's the monologue? Why isn't there a monologue here?
Yeah. Um, this is Shane's book. Might help you answer that question. This book is about Shane. It's about his coming out, his acceptance of himself, his willingness to sacrifice, to be in a relationship with this guy you shouldn't be with. And it's Shane's book. And so we get it from Shane's perspective, these big pivotal moments. Um, and that's why we don't understand what Ilya is saying. Because dramatically, it would be better to hear this from Ilya's perspective. Like, if we knew that Shane is never going to understand any of this, but I'm gonna say it anyway, just to get it off my chest. And then you get the diet, you get the like monologue, his love confession, his bleeding heart, his confession of everything that's going on. And imagine the weight of that had it been done fully and completely from Ilya's perspective.
And this is where, and I know you just said this is Shane's book, and yes, I agree. However, Rachel Reid flips who's the narrator of each chapter. It's more or less
Mm.
equal ish.
Yeah.
She picks the wrong character to narrate that chapter. We do not need to know what Shane is doing and what Shane is thinking. Don't care what he's thinking right now. My heart is with Ilya and what's happening to him.
I honestly I had that thought in my head as well whenever we were talking about, why wasn't the monologue included? Like, why did the show have to do it? And I think it's honestly just down to her inexperience at the stage of her writing.
Mm.
Um, like, go where the drama is, go where the stakes are highest, go where the emotion is, unless you have a dedicated purpose to not do it that way. Whereas you're planning on a reveal or something along those lines of what was actually said and what the other person experienced in that moment. But if you're telling it present tense, we're not really exploring this moment from another character's perspective. Choose the more interesting character to perceive this from. Um, but yeah, obviously Jacob Tierney noticed that. He went,
And thank God he did.
no, we're doing the monologue from Ilya's perspective. It's funny, in the show, the focus is completely on Ilya.
Hmm.
Completely. It's him. It's him in this tunnel, bleeding his heart out to this man that he's in love with, and he's doing it all in Russian. Where the tragedy is that Shane doesn't understand a word that he's saying. That's the great tragedy of what's happening within the scene. It's sad, it's emotional and emotive, and entirely like full of yearning. So it is. Why isn't it in the book? Like,
And to your point, like where Rachel Reid sometimes doesn't lean into where the dramatic points are, it's the equivalent of when you're learning to be a therapist and you're being shadowed or your sessions are being recorded. It's, to me, this is the equivalent of someone saying something really emotionally heavy and you not following that up as a therapist.
yeah, it's is this why it bothers us?
Maybe because it's like if someone just told you something really heavy and you're like, tell me more about that, tell me how you're feeling,
Like,
you just skip to the next topic.
yeah, like speak more on that. Like, what were you feeling in that moment? Like how did you experience that? What was your body like when you found that out? Like, did you feel that reaction moving through you? Like, oh my God, there is so much to know and so much to learn, but obviously that's not the way it goes.
No.
It's Shane's book. It's Shane's perspective. It
Yeah.
is him that is coming to terms with the love that he has for this man, and it's not empty of meaning either, the way that Rachel writes it, because
No.
it's Shane there to offer comfort because he doesn't understand what's going on. Sometimes he doesn't, but he is going to be there for Ilya in the only way that he knows how, which is to just listen. And he offers comfort using all the tools that he has available to himself, which is not much, unfortunately. And he gives it over to Ilya to use however he wants. And that in itself is an incredibly sweet gesture. Um, not obviously the drama that we were looking for, but it is still very sweet and it's indicative of his growth as well.
It's a quiet moment for me that Shane offers to Ilya. And
Mm,
Rachel herself writes, the next several minutes were filled with Ilya's voice, sounding more animated and flustered than Shane had ever heard him. He's speaking Russian. Of course, he's gonna. This is where you get him being animated and in a way that you can only do if in your mother tongue, for example.
yeah.
And for me, it's, I like that she says that because we need to know that. And we see that in the TV show. We see him, the cadence rising and the breaths and everything in that tunnel. And maybe we should just be grateful that we got that TV adaptation where we get Connor Storrie acting that out.
Yeah, because that for me was like a Emmy winning episode. Like that performance from Connor Storrie was fantastic. It was so so demanding, a very demanding thing because Connor Storrie is not Russian. He did not know how to speak Russian before this show, and yet he is like introducing so much emotion into his monologue. It's he speaking as if he fully understands what he's saying and what words are coming out, and he's putting all the thought and feeling into how he performs it. And it's fantastic. It's so impressive that he's able to do this. Like, completely Emmy worthy. Fantastic. Like, so good.
To the point where you've got Russian people watching it thinking, damn, this is actually pretty spot on. Like this,
Yeah.
this boy from Texas just blew everyone away with his Russian accent.
Yeah. And I like the I think it was Connor Story or one of the production crew was talking about how they did actually have like Russian speaking actors during the Moscow scene. Um and they were genuinely convinced that Connor Story was Russian, like Russian American.
Mm.
And He was like, "No." I
Right,
don't actually speak it, no, which
right.
is just it's just brilliant. It's so such a funny detail, but a testament that has talent. Maybe he's talent with languages. Maybe he's multi-talented.
I think there's an interview where Connor Storrie speaks a little bit of French in an interview, and Hudson is sort of looking at him like, "What, you speak French?" So I think maybe Connor just has this thing for accents. But speaking to what you were saying before about sort of how you present different versions of yourself, there's some writing here that sort of really hits home on that. So Rachel Reid writes, without the ability to translate any of it, Shane could just enjoy the sound of Ilya's voice, which he barely recognized now. The words are so quick and confident, unrestricted by Ilya. And I wonder here if there is a version of Ilya that Shane doesn't see because Ilya doesn't let him. And it just made me think that there is a whole other side to Ilya that we as a reader aren't being tapped into either.
Yeah, and this, I think, goes down to the fact that English is not his first language, and he's been shown from early in the book to struggle to communicate. And there's a lot of anxiety in trying to communicate in a way that you're not comfortable with or confident in. Um, and so you are going to be very particular about the way you speak and very cautious about the way you speak. And so there isn't much room for you then within that communication way. Um, and I've dealt with clients like that who like struggle to communicate in a certain method or in a certain way. And it causes them like really, really intense anxiety because they're really anxious that they're not going to be understood and that they'll be embarrassed and they'll not be able to perform at the height of performance that they want to be at.
Yeah,
Um, and so yeah, you can imagine it's very hard for Ilya. Like, and not to mention that English and Russian are very, very different languages, different alphabets, like different fucking letters. Like you can imagine it being extremely difficult to learn in the first place, but also to accurately communicate with someone that, you know, doesn't understand your mother language. Like it must be so difficult.
completely. And I think the sentiment in both of these sort of the perceived monologue in the book, but the actual monologue in the TV show, I think the ending and the sentiment is the same. So in the book, we get Ilya's sort of reflection on saying something along the lines of, Ilya had slipped into and on top of everything, I'm pretty sure I'm in love with you, and I don't know what to do about it. So I like that we still get that ending
Yeah,
baked to it because that stays consistent between the two.
yeah. I suppose that's the most important message of all is that that is what Ilya is trying to communicate, but he can't. And he's still cautious of Shane's reaction. Um, his life is a mess. He doesn't know if he wants to stay in Russia. He doesn't know whether or not there's anything to pursue in this relationship. If he exposes himself, then he closes off that door forever. Um, so yeah, there's a lot at stake for Ilya. He's dealing with a lot. Like this would be enough to really send someone into a depressive spiral. 100%. This like consecutive series of events unfolding in someone's life, losing your father who you had a very complicated relationship with, being in love with someone that you cannot publicly acknowledge, risking everything, your culture, your homeland, for a relationship that may not be reciprocal, um, and dealing with the emotions of being in love with someone at all. Like, what do you do with all that all at once? Literally. Oh, and by the way, your brother is also trying to wrench you for money. Like,
Yeah.
oh god.
And they haven't even said I love you to each other yet. I mean, granted, Ilya said it in Russian, but also to add to your point for Ilya, but also to feel deserving of that love in return
Mm, yeah,
is so
exactly.
important. I want to. shift gears a little because in the same chapter, what comes across in this book is Ilya is trying to get to know Shane. And it feels like Shane is either not giving it to him or withholding or guarding, perhaps. And you get this with the metaphor of Shane's home. Now, we've spoken a couple of episodes ago about how Shane literally buys an entire fucking building to literally fucking. And I know
Yep.
we had comments about this, but I'm maintaining on this. I'm standing, this is a hill I will die on. But there's this separation or this splitting that Shane does where his home I feel is very intimate, or there's something
Mhm.
that's been represented here. And within this chapter, Ilya almost uses this opportunity and says to Shane, "Tell me about your home, Hollander," he said in a tired voice. "What does it look like? I try to imagine it." So Ilya is spending a lot of time imagining what Shane is like in his environment.
Yeah, because he has a version in his head of Shane and what he's like, and he's just looking to confirm his suspicions. Like, he wants to be a part of that world because that is Shane's safe space. It's his intimate space. It's where he can be himself. And Ilya wants to be in that space with him. He wants to know the real Shane. He wants to know everything about him. And so this little peek into his world is a little door being left ajar for Ilya to be like, "Oh, what's going on in here?" And to be there with him, which is very, very sweet.
Yeah, and to your point, like from a psychodynamic point of view, there's this splitting that I see happening here, right? And when I read the line where he says, "Tell me about your home," I underlined it and I wrote, "What is this symbolizing?" I don't think he wants to know about his home. I think he wants to know Shane more. He
Yeah.
wants to go deeper with Shane. This isn't about his home. This is about Shane.
Yeah. Tell me what makes you feel safe. What makes you feel relaxed? What makes you, you know, feel at ease? Like where's your comfort? Where's your safety? Tell me all about it. What does it look like to you? That's a very intimate question to ask somebody and load it with meaning.
Because it is meaningful and Ilya
Mm.
is asking for that. And I mean, very superficially, it reminds me of that. There was this TikTok that went viral about like a couple, regardless of their sort of gender identification, where one goes, "I want to crawl inside of you," and crawls inside of their t shirt. I don't know if anyone remember that. It was a while ago. This is what I mean. He wants to be so into Shane. He wants to know Shane so much that he's like, "Tell me tell me what your home is like."
Yeah, I'm obsessed with you. Literally tell me
Right?
everything about you. Like, I wanna be in your skin. Tell me all about it.
Yes.
Like, if that's not the love you have, then you're not doing it right. You should want to body snatch your partner, like
Yeah, and there is this sort of back and forth here, and we see this even later on in the chapter where they talk about some of the books that they're reading, and so I think Shane is reading sort of this book about sort of the 1972 Canada Russia series, and Ilya says like, "Do you read books that are not about hockey?" And then Shane says, "Sometimes. I mean, no, not very often." Ilya says, "You're obsessed." And Shane says, "Of course I am, aren't you?" And then here's the kicker: Ilya says, "Maybe in a different way."
Right. Okay. I have been saying this since the beginning. Ilya likes to win. Ilya likes winning more than he likes hockey. I'm telling you, that is true. 100%. He likes to excel at something. He is super competitive. And honestly, if you had him playing football or something like that instead, Ilya would be just as passionate about it as long as he's winning. And so winning is very important to Ilya. Remember that.
Yeah. And you have been saying this literally since we started the TV show version of the podcast way back when now. It feels like a complete lifetime ago. And you always maintain the position of it's not necessarily about the hockey. The hockey was a way out for Ilya. Hockey was just
Mm.
something Ilya was just happened to be good at. It could have been anything else, and it would have been the same. It would have had the same effect because later in that chapter, Shane says, "Hockey has always been everything to me for as long as I can remember." And then Ilya says, "It has been for me as well, but more like an escape."
Yeah, yeah. For Ilya, this is like just a tool of distraction, you could almost say. I'd say he does have a love and a passion for it. Like, I don't think he just plays it for the sake of it. I think he does genuinely get enjoyment out of the experience of playing hockey. But I do think that what he enjoys more is the distraction and the winning. Um, which is interesting because this is a love story. It's a romance. Um, and the idea of a romance is that you find someone that loves you more than anything else in the world. Ilya's love, current biggest love, is escapism. Shane's is hockey. One is much better and easier to let go of than the other. I would say letting go of the escapism whenever you have something better, like, I don't know, a boyfriend who loves you to the moon, someone you can spend your entire life with and who makes you happy every single day that you're alive, or the professional sport that you've given all meaning and purpose in your life to. Like, are you giving that up for somebody? Would you give it up for somebody? And that will be an interesting dynamic that they will have to figure out in later entries.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Um, and there's one final thought about this chapter before we wrap up that I was thinking about.
Hmm.
Now, here we get the introduction of the conversation from Ilya about sort of getting married to somebody, like for the green card kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, this conversation doesn't happen until much, much later in the TV show. I think it's in episode 6. They're on the couch and they're playing like footsie. Um, and so it's interesting that this gets brought up a little earlier, but in the way that it does, because Shane's immediate reaction is, "You should come to the cottage this summer." Now, when I read that, I was like, I felt like I just had whiplash. I'm like, wait, the cottage happens this much sooner, but it doesn't. It comes in a little bit later, but the introduction of the idea of the cottage happens sooner, which I think is actually a really nice touch.
Because it's Shane being like, hold on, hold on, hold on. You may have an alternative. You may have an alternative. I might offer you an alternative. Here's the alternative. You don't need to marry the girl. And it's it's funny that that's what triggers him to finally go, oh my god, no, wait, you can't leave. You can't. We haven't even sorted this thing out yet. No, 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 no. You're not marrying anyone. Come to the cottage with me. Let's try some things out. Let's see what happens. It's done out of like panic. I think it's a panic response. It's like, no, you can't marry anyone. No, 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 no. We need to try this out first. And so Shane is like, it's almost as if Shane sees Ilya's suggestion as like, oh my god, he's not getting enough from me. Like, I'm not giving him enough of me for him to even consider me. And so he's like, have it all. Like, here, take my safe space, take my everything here. The cottage. The cottage, my favorite place in the world. Here, you're coming with me. Let me show you my favorite place. Let me show you everything that matters to me. That is a meaningful gesture to, you could say, distract Ilya from the idea of marrying someone else.
That's an interesting take because I had a slightly different take on that. What I
Mm.
took from that was, I'm losing him.
Mm.
He's going to marry someone, he's going to live with them, he's going to have this whole entire life with this potentially, I think, a woman, and maybe
Yeah.
even kids, and I'm going to lose him forever. And I felt like this was Shane's way of like throwing something at the wall to
Mm.
see if it sticks.
Yeah, and that also reads right as well. That seems a like a good interpretation of it too, because it makes sense. Because let's not forget, these two cannot communicate to save their lives. Cannot. So Shane really has no idea what Ilya's thinking at all. he doesn't know what he thinks about their relationship.
And it's a natural response, I think, when you feel like you're losing someone, you're like, okay, I'm all in here. Take this, let me offer this. Like, I want to keep you, so take what you want and let me offer you something, because that's what you do, right? You throw someone a lifeline, you throw someone a rope.
So we're going to stop there then. Guys, thank you so much for joining us again. So if you are enjoying this, make sure you like, don't be afraid to subscribe and to share this as well. We actually have a book club, if you're not already aware. It's on Fable. It's called The Long Game book club. But that's us for now, and we'll see you next time.